50 years ago, Monsignor Droz wrote a letter to the pastor, the present pastor, as part of a time capsule that was to be placed in the ground here in New Braunfels, because New Braunfels was celebrating 125 years at the time. Well, now we're celebrating 175 years, and I had the honor and the privilege of opening that letter and reflecting on how things were 50 years ago. Buddy, was this a project of the city? Must have been?
Yes.
Yeah, 50 years ago. Yeah. And so they asked several people to write letters that would be put in a time capsule 50 years ago. And one of the individuals that was asked to write a letter was the pastor that was here. What was his name?
Monsignor Droz.
Monsignor Droz. And so he wrote this letter, which I picked up last week ago, Friday, and I'm going to read it. And first of all, it's an interesting thing about one thing. It's on school stationery. Okay? But there's also postage due on the bottom left. 6-cent stamp with President Roosevelt on it.
Wow. I know, right? But now you're going to have to write another one for the next one.
Whoa.
Yeah. He wrote a novel.
I was going
He
to say
did.
that's a long one.
Oh, let's sit down.
Maybe we should all sit.
Everybody sit, if we can. Dear Padre, interesting. It's dated April the 2nd, 1970. This is an endearing Spanish expression we often, dear Padre, this is an endearing Spanish expression we often use in addressing a priest, which means dear father. In writing this letter, I am trying to beat the deadline. We had 2 months in which to write it, but there are always so many things to do that big things don't get done till the last minute. Some things don't change. In the meantime, after a hectic Holy Week during which my good associate pastor dislocated his disc in the back, which left me with most of the chores, this week is no better. We are in the midst of the 125th anniversary celebrations. I have a sermon to preach at the First Protestant Church Sunday, and a priest Silver Jubilee sermon, the Reverend Edward Jansky, 40 years a priest, Inez, Texas, near Victoria, and it is already Thursday. Last night, the First Protestant Church joined us in an ecumenical service honoring the memory of the first settlers with the Reverend Elmer Gumber in the pulpit. Next Sunday, we join the First Protestant congregation with yours truly in the pulpit. Catholics still have the obligation of attending Mass on Sunday, but they may participate in full at a Protestant service. No longer is it not a communion service, as long as it is not a communion service. Saints Peter and Paul and the First Protestant were the first congregations from the day the settlers arrived. They arrived on Good Friday, March 27th, 1845, and held a joint Good Friday service. I guess necessity knows no law. In those days, for a Catholic and Protestant to worship together was an unheard of thing, almost worthy of censure and excommunication. Today, we can worship together as stated above. Our big Jubilee celebration for the parish will not take place till June the 28th, the day before the feast of Saints Peter and Paul, which falls on Monday. We will have a Mass of thanks on the Sunday before at 3:30 in the afternoon. It should be a big day for us. After that, I'll be ready to retire. After all, I am 61, which means 36 years in the service. I believe in younger men taking hold. We oldsters tire too easily, and a tired body and tired mind cannot do the work that a parish this size deserves. I did have my sights on the open-air chapel at Canyon Lake about which I will speak later, but priests are getting scarcer and scarcer. It may be that I will have to stay in the harness here for some time. I do have a good helper in the Reverend Peter McDonough. That helps, but at my age, the weekend apostolate at the lake would be just fine. The last 2 years were years of crisis in the archdiocese. We lost about 33 priests from active duty. 66, known as the dissenters, signed the letter to the Holy Father in Rome to have the Most Reverend Robert E. Lucy, a champion labor leader, or more properly, a champion in the social action field, resign from his position because of age and now inability to cope with the problems of the archdiocese. His Excellency did a great job in this archdiocese, but he stayed on the job too long. Had he resigned 2 years before, when he celebrated his Golden Jubilee, he would have gone down in history as a great man. Maybe he still will, but what happened marred his great past. As a result of this move, 33 priests were lost to the service. Some 5 or 6 married. Others have taken professional jobs and will probably marry in the end. As a diocesan senator, my term for my age group has just expired. We, the Senate, have worked hard on creating what we call the weekend apostolate. A priest is in professional work 5 days of the week and helps out in a parish over the weekend. We as senators maintain that there is room and need for such an apostolate. But our Archbishop, now Francis Fury, Robert Emmett Lucy finally resigned, said that he could not move a finger in this direction until the national body of bishops approved such an apostolate. As a Senate, we wrote Cardinal Dearden a letter in Detroit, Michigan, national chairman of the body of bishops. We have been told that pressure is being put on all the bishops of the country to improve such an apostolate. Bishops have problems, especially with the younger clergy. They believe in what is known today reasonable obedience and not the absolute obedience of the past. Bishops in the past had difficulties with the older clergy. Today it is with the young. If I remember correctly, I read the other day that more than 2,500 priests in the United States have been last to active service. Our neighboring diocese of Dallas lost 33 last year because of the advanced age of Bishop Gorman. He finally resigned to be replaced by Bishop Shapey of the San Angelo Diocese and former priest of the Dallas Diocese. I would not want to be a bishop over the priest of the diocese where formerly I had been a priest. Our own past auxiliary bishop, Stephen Levin, is now Bishop of San Angelo, and we have a new auxiliary. It is the Most Reverend Patrick Flores, pastor of the St. Joseph's, Houston. He will be installed and consecrated on May the 5th, Cinco de Mayo, to our Mexican people, their Independence Day from Spain. I changed typewriters here. You did this a different. Mere comments about the new liturgy. As a young priest, the liturgy was all in Latin. In the Mass, the altar boys made all of the responses, and only the prayers, the epistle, gospel, preface, were said out loud, gradual also. The rest was said in a low voice. The Latin Mass was a wonderful opportunity for people, ladies particular, to say all their private prayers. Now they have to say the Mass. Canon and all the prayers are said out loud. Prior to this, marriage took place before Mass, also baptism. Now these are taking place during Mass. Marriages have already. This is something new for baptism. They take place after the gospel. Baptismal water is to be blessed before each baptism, except during Easter time. Here, water blessed on Holy Saturday is used. Prior to this, all baptismal water was blessed on Holy Saturday. Masses may be said in homes, and it is preferred that during the week masses he said in different sections of the parish during the week, and is the main church only on Sundays, and use the main church only on Sundays. We have said masses in the home, but not altogether away from the church during the week. If I'm rambling, it is because I'm getting tired. This letter, however, must be finished. Priests, when they attended any function such as funerals, they were all saying the breviary during Mass in what we call the old days. Now they too participate in the Mass and are excused from the saying of all of the office except lauds or vespers. If we binate, we have the same privilege. Funeral masses have taken to white instead of the traditional black or the more recent purple, and the Paschal candle is sewed at the coffin. Before this, 6 candles were used at the coffin in church. Also the libera, as we called it, during which the coffin was incense, took place at the end of Mass. Now this ceremony of incensing takes place at the offertory. The Paschal candle and white is used to emphasize the resurrection. The liturgy of the Mass is supposed to be fixed except in the funeral Mass. This is still in an experimental stage. Daily comments on television are that salaries of the future will be double what they are now. Just recently, our salary was raised from $150 to $200. The parish furnishes room and board. We also get a car allowance of $900 a year and $200 towards Social Security. Retirement plans has not been worked out yet, but pastors who have retired receive $400. Assistant salary is $150. It was $100. And think of it, when I was first ordained, my salary was $25 a month and a car allowance of $5. This in 1934. Mass stipends were $1, $5 for a high Mass. This has not changed much. Low Masses are still $1 and $2 if a special time day is designated. Stole fees were $10 for a wedding and the same for funerals. With Mass, this was usually $15. Back in these days when my salary was $25 a month, I could buy a new Ford 5 and 6 passenger car for $635. Today, I have to pay $3,600. I referred to an open air chapel at Canyon Lake. 3 years ago, in May, we started our first service out in the open under the trees. Altar under a patio tent. We're still out in the open, however, the altar area is now enclosed with an altar is now enclosed with an altar hut 6 by 6 with large plastic glass openings on 4 sides. During bad weather, people stay in the car. The sound system carries the voice into the car, so the chapel is an open-air drive-in chapel, the only kind in the state. Sunday attendance ranges from 150 in the winter months to 500 and 900 in the summer months. At present, there are only 20 permanent Catholic residents in the area.
Wow. That wasn't that long after Canyon Lake was built.
Okay, so he's still talking about Canyon Lake. He's not
still
talking
talking
about
about
here.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
I was
yeah,
going to
yeah.
say, because this
Yeah,
is a
yeah.
little...
No,
However,
yeah.
many more have weekend homes. Last year, our annual income was $9,000 from the regular offering. This year, we are having our first festival with a grand raffle, raffling off a raffling off a lot, a steer, $100 bond, a rod and reel, all donated. We're having 9,000 raffle tickets printed, all printed gratis by the Shiner Brewery. They print the tickets if we sell their beer exclusively. I love that. Last June, we purchased a home which was just across the way from the altar hut. With the home, we now have 14 acres of land. 5 of those really belong to me, but I am sorta holding them for the chapel, and in case I die, I will likely donate them to the chapel. The home is now furnished and ready to live in. We bought it at the cost of $16,400 with the 2 acre lots. Our debt on the house is only $3,750. It will be $2,750 for I am making a $1,000 payment on the debt in the next 2 weeks. 4 acres of the original property were donated to us by Mrs. Thomas McClure. The chapel is named after Mr. McClure. The rest of the acreage was purchased at $200 an acre. This was practically giving it away, for at the time land around the lake was selling at $5,000 a lot net, an acre let, but as ordinary let. I don't understand that language. The 5 acres I purchased I could sell today at $10,000. However, I will most likely donate them to the church. Canyon Lake draws us many as 70 and 80,000 over the better weekend. The average summer weekend is about 45,000. Must be ready to accommodate anywhere from 200 to 2,000 people. This we can readily do, and when we do build a chapel, it will have an open air atmosphere, such a nice reef with sliding glass panels for walls, which during the summer can be rolled back, and any number of people can be taken off under the rest in the portico and outside under the trees. We are firmly convinced now that it would be a mistake to build a first-class chapel, air-conditioned and all. People do not come to the lake dressed for church. And if we had a first-class chapel, they would say we are not dressed for church and would not come. Now they can come as they are. So far, we have had 2 weddings in the open and 2 baptisms. Here we were ahead of the new liturgy on baptisms, for we had the baptism after the gospel and all participated in it. I am so exhausted now that I'm really ready for the grave. I still have the 2 sermons ahead of me, and within the next 15 minutes have to go to the Lions Club, a luncheon club. I am the tail twister with the Baptist minister, which combination creates a lot of fun. It's like the negative and the positive poles on a battery. Maybe in your day, you don't have them kind of batteries. Pastor must show community interest, and the luncheon clubs are one way to do so. Bowling and playing golf is another way. Meet the public wherever and whenever you can. After all, a pastor is not just pastor. This is enough for the 20th century. If I have left anything out, consult the history book we are publishing toward the end of the year. God bless you, Father, and say a prayer for me. Never bury anyone in the cemetery without adding a prayer for the pastors who worked in the parish. The best to you, and God love you. Sincerely in Christ, Monsignor Anthony F. Dros.